Let me talk to you real for a moment, because a lot of people are sitting around confused, overthinking, losing sleep, checking phones, rereading old messages, wondering if he misses me. Why hasn't he texted? Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you into something most people completely misunderstand about men in silence. Because if you don't understand this, you'll keep hurting yourself over things that are not even what they look like on the surface. A man's silence is not always peace. Sometimes it is war. Not with you, but within himself. You see, a lot of women think when a man goes quiet, it automatically means he is done, he is gone, he doesn't care, or he has emotionally checked out. But in reality, there are moments when a man goes silent because his feelings are actually too loud for him to handle. Yes, you heard me right, too loud. Because when a man is dealing with real emotions, when he is actually attached, he feels a deep sense of connection and intimacy. When he is actually affected by a woman's presence, his mind does not always know how to process it in a healthy or direct way. Instead of expressing it, instead of communicating it, instead of confronting it, he retreats inward. And that retreat looks like S. Silence. But inside that silence, there is a whole storm going on that you cannot see from the outside. He is replaying conversations in his head. He is remembering moments he didn't think mattered at the time. He is questioning decisions he made too quickly. He is thinking about what you are doing, who you are with, whether you've moved on, whether you still think about him the way he thinks about you. And all of that stays locked inside him, because many men are not taught how to process emotional conflict. They are not taught how to say, I miss you, without feeling like they are losing power. They are not taught how to say, I care, without feeling vulnerable. So instead of expressing what is happening internally, they do what they've always done, go quiet. But silence does not equal absence. Silence often equals overload. And what makes this even more complicated is that a man can miss you and resist you at the same time. He can think about you and avoid you at the same time. He can feel drawn to you and still not reach out because he's trying to control what he is feeling. Because let me tell you something about emotional struggle, and the night is not always visible. It doesn't always come with tears or explanations or clear signals. Sometimes it comes with avoidance. Sometimes it comes with distance. Sometimes it comes with him acting like nothing is wrong when internally everything is shifted. And you're sitting there thinking if he cared, he would text that. But I need you to understand something deeper than that surface level thinking. Caring does not always translate into action immediately, especially for a man who is wrestling with pride, fear, confusion, and emotional vulnerability all at once. Because now he is in a mental battle. One part of him wants to reach out. One part of him wants to hear your voice. One part of him wants to reconnect. But another part of him is saying, don't. Stay in control. Don't show weakness. Don't risk rejection. Don't open yourself up. So what does he do? He freezes. And that freeze looks like silence. But inside that silence, there is movement you cannot see. He is thinking about whether you've replaced him already. He is wondering if he lost something he can't get back. He is remembering how it felt when you were close. He is comparing the present emptiness to the emotional connection he once had. And the more he thinks, the more conflicted he becomes. Because now it is not just about missing you, Ed, it's about what it would mean to come back. What if you don't respond the same way? What if you've changed? What if he opens that door and realizes he is no longer important to you? So instead of facing that fear, he stays silent, and that silence confuses you. But confusion on your end does not mean clarity on his end. He is not clear either. He's just stuck between emotion and ego, between desire and fear, between reaching out and holding back. And this is why you cannot judge a man's feelings only by what he does not do. Because some of the strongest emotions a man will ever feel are the ones he struggles the most to express. And here's the part that really Matt Hazu may never see that internal struggle. You may never hear him admit it. You may never get the explanation you are waiting for. But that does not mean it is not happening. It is happening in his silence. It is happening in his thoughts. It is happening in those moments when he picks up his phone, looks at your name, and puts it back down. It is happening when he sees something that reminds him of you, and he pauses longer than he should. It is happening when he goes quiet but not emotionally detached, because there is a difference between not caring and not knowing how to respond to what you feel. And a lot of men are not as emotionally simple as people assume. So before you decide what his silence means, understand this silence can be confusion. Silence can be fear. Silence can be pride. Silence can be emotional overload. And sometimes silence is a man trying to protect himself from feelings he does not fully understand yet. But what you must never do is lose yourself in trying to decode it endlessly. Because while he is in his internal struggle, you still have to live your life in clarity. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you deeper into something that most people get completely wrong. when it comes to men, emotions, and silence. Because if you don't understand this part, you will keep writing stories in your head that don't match reality. Men don't always show you what they feel directly. They show you fragments, pieces, patterns, indirect signals. And if you are only waiting for a clear message, a clear confession, a clear "I miss you," then you are going to miss everything that is happening underneath the surface. Because a man can miss you deeply and still not text you. And that contradiction confuses a lot of women. They think missing someone automatically leads to action, but for many men, there are layers between emotion and expression. And one of the biggest layers is behavior. When a man misses you but won't text you, his feelings don't disappear, they shift into behavior that doesn't require direct contact. He starts observing instead of engaging. He starts watching instead of speaking. He starts reacting instead of initiating. You may not get a message, but you will often still be in his awareness. He might look at your stories without saying anything. He might check your updates more than he should. He might linger on your posts longer than necessary. He might become unusually aware of your online presence, even if he stays completely silent. And to someone who doesn't understand men, this looks like nothing, but it is something. Because men who are emotionally detached don't track. They don't observe. They don't hover in the background of your life. When they are done in a clean, distant, uninterested way. But a man who misses you while staying silent, he is still connected to your energy, just not directly. And this is where you have to learn emotional intelligence instead of emotional assumption. Because assumption will always tell you if he cared, he would text. But emotional intelligence will tell you if he cared, he will still show signs even if he doesn't text, and those signs are not loud. They are subtle. That is why most people miss them. Another hidden behavior is timing. You might notice that whenever you become active, he becomes active. Not in a way that is obvious or direct, but in timing that feels too consistent to ignore. It is like your presence online triggers his awareness. You post, he appears. You disappears. Not always immediately, but often in patterns. That is not coincidence every time. That is attention without communication. And then there is emotional projection. A man who misses you but doesn't text will often project his feelings indirectly into how he behaves around other things. He may become quieter than usual, less engaged in conversations, slightly distracted, not fully present in the way he normally is. Because part of his mind is not where his body is. It is with you. But here's the part that confuses people the most. Why doesn't he just text? And the answer is not simple, but it is real. Because reaching out is not just about missing someone. It is about risk, emotional risk, ego risk, rejection risk. A man can miss you and still not want to risk being ignored. He can miss you and still not want to feel exposed. He can miss you and still not want to be the one who breaks first. Because in his mind, texting you is not just sending a message. It is opening a door. And once that door is open, anything can happen. You may respond warmly. You may respond coldly. You may not respond at all. And that uncertainty is what stops many men from acting. So instead of risking that emotional outcome, he stays in observation mode. He watches. He waits. He analyzes your energy from a distance. And while he is doing that, you are often misinterpreting his silence as disinterest. But silence is not always rejection. Sometimes silence is hesitation. And hesitation comes from emotional weight. Now let's go deeper into something most people ignore: internal comparison. When a man misses you but won't text, he often compares his current emotional state with the memory of how things used to feel with you. He remembers the comfort, the attention, the emotional connection, and then he looks at his current situation silent, distant, uncertain. And that comparison creates internal conflict. Because now he is not just missing you. He is evaluating what he lost versus what he has now. And this is where ego steps in again. Because even if his heart wants to reach out, his pride might say, don't go back too quickly. Don't show that you miss her. Don't lose control. So he stays stuck between two forces of motion pulling him towards you, and ego holding him back. And in that tension, nothing gets sent. No message, no call, no clear action, just silence. But behind that silence, there is mental activity you cannot see. Replaying, remembering, resisting, reconsidering. And this is why reading men is not about waiting for words. It is about understanding patterns, energy shifts, and behavior inconsistencies. Because a man who is truly indifferent does not leave patterns. He leaves nothing. But a man who misses you while staying silent, he leaves traces everywhere, just not in direct communication. And the hardest truth you have to accept is this: you cannot force a man out of his internal conflict. You cannot text your way into his clarity. You cannot chase your way into his decision. Because if he is still in that space of missing you but not acting, the solution is not more pressure, it is time and self-awareness on his side. And for you, the real power is not in decoding every sign endlessly. The real power is in recognizing when you are dealing with emotional confusion versus emotional absence. Because one still has energy attached to you and the other does not. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you even deeper into something most people never fully understand about emotional behavior, especially when it comes to men who are silent but still clearly affected by your absence. Because there is a stage that confuses almost everybody, the stage where a man misses you, but he still does not reach out. And in that space, you are left overthinking, replaying everything, trying to decode silence like it is a message written in invisible ink. But what you need to understand is this: not all emotional responses move in a straight line. Some men feel first, resist second, and act last, or sometimes not at all. And that delay between feeling and action is where most of the confusion lives. Now let's talk about something very real: fear of emotional exposure. When a man misses you but won't text, it is not always because he doesn't care. In many cases, it is because he cares, and that itself becomes uncomfortable for him. Because caring opens vulnerability, and vulnerability for many men feels like losing control. So instead of stepping into that vulnerability, he holds back. He sits in silence. But inside that silence, there is a constant internal dialogue. He is thinking about whether reaching out will make him look weak. He is wondering if you have already emotionally moved on. He is questioning whether his message will even matter anymore. And most importantly, he is trying to calculate how much emotional risk he is willing to take just to reconnect. And while all of this calculation is happening, nothing is sent. Not because there is nothing to say, but because there is too much to risk. And that is a very important distinction. Because people often think action is only blocked by lack of feeling. But in reality, action is often blocked by too many feelings at once: confusion, pride, fear, attachment, uncertainty, all colliding in the same space. Now let's go into something deeper: emotional avoidance behavior. When a man misses you but refuses to text, he often replaces direct communication with indirect engagement. This is where things get subtle. You won't always see obvious signals, but you will see patterns if you pay attention. He may suddenly become more present in your digital space without interacting. He may check your activity more often than usual. He may show awareness of your life changes without acknowledging them directly. He may even appear and disappear in ways that feel too intentional to be random. But here's the key: he is not engaging, he is observing, and observation is not indifference. Observation is emotional containment. It is his way of staying connected without exposing himself to rejection, embarrassment, or emotional imbalance. Because texting you would mean entering a space where he no longer controls the outcome. But watching from a distance allows him to stay emotionally involved without risking exposure. And that creates a strange dynamic. He is present, not present enough, interested but not acting, aware but not reaching. And this is where many people misread the situation completely. They assume silence means detachment, but in many cases, silence is actually controlled attachment. Now let's go into the third layer: internal emotional comparison and regret processing. When a man misses you but does not text, his mind does not stay neutral. It starts comparing past emotional experiences with present emotional emptiness. He remembers how easy things felt with you at certain moments. He remembers comfort, attention, connection, familiarity, and then he returns to his current state of absence, silence, emotional distance. That contrast creates internal discomfort. And that discomfort does something important: it forces reflection. He begins to ask himself questions he doesn't say out loud. Did I take her for granted? Did I act too distant? Did I lose something that I cannot easily replace? Would things feel different if I reached out now? But here's where ego steps in again. Because even if regret exists, ego does not disappear easily. Ego says if you reach out now, you might look like you are chasing something you already lost. Ego says if she moved on, you will only confirm your own loss. Ego says stay silent and protect yourself. So now he is stuck between emotional reflection and self-protection. And in that internal conflict, he delays action again. And delay becomes silence. But that silence is not empty. It is full of thought, hesitation, and emotional processing that you are not seeing. And this is why so many women feel confused in situations like this. Because from the outside, nothing is happening. But from the inside, too much is happening. The mistake is assuming that visible action is the only proof of emotional reality. But emotional reality often exists before action, sometimes long before. And a man can be emotionally active internally while being physically inactive externally. So what you are seeing is not the full picture. You are seeing restraint, not absence. You are seeing hesitation, not disinterest. You are seeing internal conflict, not emotional emptiness. And that is why understanding men requires more than reacting to silence. It requires understanding what silence is protecting. Because sometimes silence is not about you being forgotten. Sometimes silence